Welcome. Welcome to the Big Time, Todd. So, since this is big time, I thought it'd be kind of cool that you get the first word. Your first keynote, you can take the first word. How's that sound?
It sounds great. You know, been having to get a lot off my chest. You know, Jonathan and I, we've had our mentorship for a very, very long time, probably like 4 years, 2019. So just have to say and just put it out for everybody. Jonathan didn't really teach me how to become a leader. I have to put that out there. And I say that just because to some people, leadership or being a leader is a little more than a role, right? Instead, what Jonathan did was he mentored me in the responsibilities of leadership, right? I remember when we first started our mentorship, 2019, you know, I'm 19 years old, and I'm calling him, because we didn't meet each other first yet, but I'm on the phone, and I'm like, yeah, you know, I want to be a speaker, and a poet, and best-selling author, so many things that I want to do. And I'm like, that is all under the umbrella of the future. That's my name, the future. And it's like,
He branded himself.
yes.
The future.
I used to draw on my wrist and everything in high school, like the future was it. And he's like, okay, well, what does that really mean? I'm like, what do you mean? Like the future. You know, I'm the future, you know, we're gonna help people in the future, you know, in the future, you know, people are gonna help others. Like, it just made sense. And it's like, it was lacking specificity, right? And it didn't really tell you what I represented. So it was my responsibility to figure out who I be. And I know English major, bad English, but who I be, bad English. But who I be basically just represented my character, my characteristics, who I represented, my capabilities, like what am I actually able to do, right? And it also represented my contributions. How will I be able to add value to people around me, right? So, start off with 3 things. He helped me hammer this down a lot. Excuse me. But he helped me hammer this down a lot. The 3 things that I needed, one was vision. Vision is your where, right? A vision is a clear and mental picture of a desired future, of your desired future. So, a lot of mistakes that people make with the vision is that they don't dream big enough, right? They just kind of dream within their square. But me, being 19, I wanted to like conquer the world. I wanted to do everything. So I had to kind of, what do I want to do? Where's my where? Where am I going? The next thing I wanted to figure out was my mission, right? Your mission is your why, the heart behind things. Why do you want the things that you want? Why do you want to do the things that you say you want to do, right? The conviction behind it. So I had to figure that out. And the last thing I had to figure out was my goals. The goals were like your what? What to do to get to where you want to go. What can I do to make my vision and my mission reality, right? And it wasn't until I got those 3 where I was able to transition it from the future into Taj the poet. You know, a little simpler. Taj writes poetry, cool, like real simple. But it was through that where I was able to truly embody and walk into the type of man that I wanted to be and the type of leader that I wanted to be. And that's kind of just on one side of the coin, right? I had to also recognize if I was ready or not to take on the challenges that I wanted, right? I wanted to be, you know, big speaker, you know, have this vision. I mean, part of the vision is what I'm doing here today. I have the honor of being able to speak to you guys, right? That was a part of the vision. I saw this. But the other way, I had to be ready. I had to prepare. And Jonathan actually has something called the readiness assessment. It's in Raising Them Ready, in one of his books. But it's kind of broken down into 2 things, right? You have your mindset, which is your willingness, and then you have your ability, your ableness, right? You have to be both willing and able to be ready to meet a demand, or to be ready to meet a goal. So, me as a mentor in Dallas, I like to, you know, the kids are safe with me, of course, but when we're playing games, whether it's basketball, Connect Four, I'm trying to destroy them. Like, I'm trying to dunk on every single child, I'm trying to beat every single child, and like, we'll play Connect Four, right? And I'm like undefeated, you know, 300-0, you know, against the kids. And I go in front of them, and I'm talking, I'm like, yeah, I'm a dog. Like, Coach Todd is the dog. I'm like barking, just being obnoxious, you know, having fun. And they'll sit down, and sometimes some kids will sit, and they'll be like, I'm playing Coach Todd, so I'm gonna lose, right? And I'd stop them, and I'd be like, hey, well, why even play? In your mind, you've already predetermined that you weren't ready. You already predetermined that you weren't gonna win. So why start something if you told yourself that you weren't gonna do it in the first place? And that is why your mentality is so important. That's why it's a huge key of being ready. So I always tell them, like, I don't know who says the quote. Maybe someone can tell me, help me out. But those who say they can and those who say they can't are both usually right. That's usually what I tell them. So if you're telling me, or you're telling yourself that you're about to lose before you even play, what's the point of even starting, right? And the other thing, being able, right? Your ableness goes into 2 categories: your skill set and tool set, right? Your skill set are the things that you probably do in your sleep, right? There's a lot of things that I can do. I love sports. I can write. I can, dribble basketball, all that stuff. I can do that without thinking about it. Those are things that I'm gifted in. Your skill set are the things that you have natural talents and abilities in, right? And then your tool set are the resources. These are the things that are outside of yourself. So for me, Jonathan played a huge role as my mentor in helping and being my tool set so that I can further my skills, right? And you have to have both. So like the challenge is to build a house. You're a master carpenter and you got all the skills, but you have no like plan on what to build. Well then there's not really gonna be a house that's being built. There's no parameters, there's no guidelines, there's no resources, right? Or you have all the resources, but you ain't got no skills. It's not really a house that you want to be in, right? It's not going to be built properly. So for us to truly be ready to take on the demands, to take on these goals, you have to be both willing and able, have the proper mindset, have the skill set, have the tool set, all right? And that's my question to you guys. What are you trying to do? What are you ready in? What are you ready for? And also, what is your vision? Like, what do you want to be? Like, if you had no parameters, no restrictions, what is something that you want to do right now, right? What's your mission? What's your why? Why is it so important to you? Like, why do you want to do these things? And the third thing would be, what are some goals for you to get there? Like, I always ask people when I have conversations like, man, like, tell me the next goal. What's the next big thing that you're doing? Some people will tell me a whole, life plan, and then some people will be like, I don't know, I'm just taking it day by day, right? But in order for us to truly walk and grow in our leadership, we have to have those 3 things, right? And then truly recognize that we're ready to be able to do that. This reminds me actually of the first lesson, because once I had that, I was able to kind of have a plan of who I wanted to be every single day and follow every single day, right? Which kind of reminds me of the first lesson that we learned, Jonathan. I think maybe you should probably teach him this time.
The willingness lesson?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a lesson about willingness that we probably all know, and so I'll start the sentence and you finish it, and we'll see how we do. Okay. So this is a willingness of practice. We all know that practice makes
Perfect.
I'm sorry. Did they say perfect?
They said perfect.
They said perfect.
Yeah, they said perfect.
There's a problem with that reply. Is there any such a thing as perfect?
No.
Okay, so then why do we say practice makes perfect? It's kind of been ingrained into us over the years, hasn't it? If practice made perfect, then we would see a performance that couldn't be bettered after that performance. Yet with practice, the next 2 in line at the Olympics, or the next in line in industry, the next in line in medicine, has practiced to a point where they have exceeded the previous quote-unquote perfect performance. So if practice doesn't make perfect, which we know it doesn't, and parents, please, and educators, please, stop telling our kids that practice makes perfect, because then they get this perfection complex. Instead, in the willingness factor, if you practice, are you willing to get better? Practice simply makes better. And if we're going to practice something to get better at it, and we're talking about leadership, how do we practice to get better in leadership? There's a lot of conversation about leadership, and yet we'll come back, and Taj and I have talked about this for years now, that if you're going to practice to be a better leader, you actually have to practice stewardship before leadership.
Right.
If you can practice good stewardship, then you can eventually rise to the level of leadership, but it begins with stewardship. By definition, stewardship is responsible management, supervision, and protection of what's been entrusted to your care. I'll say that one more time. Stewardship is responsible management, supervision, and protection of what's been entrusted to your care. And this practice of stewardship is not new to anybody in the room, but how we define it and how we place it into the rise towards leadership has changed in a generation, in just one single generation. This is the old model of leadership development. We had leaders over followers. And I get to be interviewed quite often, whether it's a podcast or in public, whether it's for an article or a show. And I got a request for an interview from an elementary school student, which doesn't happen very often, but I thought, how kind of fun is this? And I accepted the invitation. and they made an appointment at my office. This young man showed up, dressed up. He had his notebook and a series of questions, sat down across from me at my desk and had a little bit of small talk, much like many interviews go that I have about leadership. And after just a little bit of settling in and make sure everybody, do we need anything to drink? If settled and you feel comfortable, this young man looks at me and says, can we begin our interview? And I said, sure, son. My son, his school had assigned him to go interview someone from an older generation. And he picked his father. And so now my son is sitting there, and we've gone through all this formality, of which I was very pleased and proud of as a father. I thought, wow, he can go out in the world and conduct interviews. This is impressive. He said, my first question for you, Mr. Catherman, what was it like growing up in the 1900s? And I looked at my own son, and I'm like, who coached you on that question? I look at my media, who told him to ask that question? That's like the best question I've ever been asked when it comes to how do we define the pursuit of leadership. Because this old model of leadership pursuit, where we had leaders over followers, is very different in the 1900s than it is today. The emerging generation of young leaders today expect something different from us, and it includes stewardship. We need to expect the same from them. This is a new leadership pursuit model. Membership, then stewardship, and then leadership. Membership is just belonging to an organization. Welcome to being a student at UNF. Congratulations. Welcome to the team. You've made the team. Welcome to the company. Welcome to the Ritz. Welcome to the office. Welcome to wherever you work. You're now a member of this organization, and our bare minimum requirements are clearly defined in this document. If you abide by these requirements, if you pay your dues at the gym, you can stay. And most people, unfortunately, that is their first measure, and they are not called to a higher pursuit. Some, and some are in this room, see more than membership as their minimum requirement. They believe they need to make an investment in the responsible management, supervision, and protection of what's been entrusted to their care, hence stewardship. And then at some point, as you perform excellent stewardship, you're doing what is not just required, but also what you're passionate about and you're committed to it. Someone will come along, we'll talk about this in a minute, and ask, how do you become a leader? So when we take a look at this pursuit of leadership, we must first take a look at the pursuit of stewardship, responsible management, supervision, protection of what's been entrusted to your care.
That's good. And again, from membership, we have to travel through to stewardship, right? And there's a lot of different membership roles that we have here, students, business people, educators. And for the students, since having just been one, and I'm still a student, you should never want to stop being a student. But to the students, what's been entrusted into your care is to be a learner who asks great questions, right? When you ask great questions, you should expect great answers. And when you ask shallow questions, you should expect shallow answers. And when you ask no questions, you're not going to get anything back. No answer, no answer. All right. So, and it's really good for us to be able to do that, because this is how we continue to keep the ball rolling. This is how we continue to grow. This is how we continue to practice being better. If we're not asking great questions, then we will not really know how to be the innovator, how to think differently, how to change, how we know we're doing what we're supposed to do, and if it can be done in a different way to make it better. So as a student, make sure that we are finding people to ask great questions to.
And as educators, which I believe everybody in this room is an educator, whether you are currently enrolled here as a student, which makes you a learner, there's someone who will learn from you, which makes you an educator, as well as everybody in this room is also a learner, so we're all students. But to the educators in this room, when the learners ask us great questions, please provide them with great answers. That is the expectation. And when you don't know the answer, sometimes the very greatest response you can give them is to say, I don't know yet. But I'm going to pursue learning more, and when I find out, I'll share it with you. Or even better yet, why don't we look for the answer together. Because that's what leaders do, is they pass on to others what they have learned. And maybe I don't know it yet, but we're going to pursue it and find it together.
All right, that's good. And to the business people in the room, what's been entrusted into your care is the health and wealth of the community. When I think of community, I think of me, because I'm a part of the community, but I also think of a bunch of me's. Community is built up of a bunch of individuals. And the biggest way that we can truly care for the health and wealth of our community is if we shift our perspective. It's like a 180-degree shift, right? I like to think of the M in me. Do an M like this. Right? This is an M, right? And we shifted 180 degrees to make a W for we, right? So how can we find ways to truly stop thinking about me and start thinking about we? That would be the best way that we can be stewards in our community.
And then to all of us in the room, entrusted to our care is to love one another. And I truly believe this because I do not believe you can be a leader without love. So what we know about love is that love is patient and love is kind. If you think about the very best leaders you know, are they not patient and kind leaders? I also know about love is that it is not selfish, arrogant, or rude. And the very best leaders I know are not selfish, arrogant, or rude. And the last thing about love is it rejoices in what is good and is right, and the very best leaders rejoice in what is good and what is right. And that's why I rejoice in this young man. As his mentor, teaching him the pursuit of leadership through stewardship, I see a young man here, and if you look at the others who are involved in the mentorship relationship in this room, I see a young man here, I say he is in the pursuit of love, because that's the only way that he will truly lead and practice those responsibilities of leadership. Because as a great steward, and his now young mentees in his program, when they come to him and say, Coach Taj, how do I do what you do? Without love, Coach Taj would say, I worked really hard at this. And you're going to have to work really hard at it too. Took me a while to figure it out, and you're going to have to figure it out too. That's the whole idea of, sure, you can one day be great, but maybe not as great as me. As a parent, I want to see my children have a better life than mine. As a mentor, I want to see the next generation do greater than we have done. And then when a mentee comes to a mentor, someone who's stewarding looks to a leader and says, how did you do that? And the leader says, I'd be happy to share. That is the invitation into leadership. I'd be happy to share with you everything I have. Because when you are loved, then you love others as you love yourself. And if you're not loving others, I'm going to argue you might have a hard time loving yourself. So if you love yourself, love others, because that's what leadership is all about. And I know this man loves himself. And I don't mean like that self-esteem kind of love that we've been teaching generations, like you gotta love yourself. And then the pandemic comes and they're like, I don't know what to do with myself. I mean the self-efficacy kind of love yourself. Self-efficacy is self-esteem with proof. I know I love myself because, and I can put my finger on this skill, that trait, this quality. And I think that Taj has done an exceptional job of that in showing that he loves himself because he can demonstrate to himself the mindset, skill set, tool set, the willingness and ability. He is ready to lead. When we first met in person, that same picture we took the selfie of, we went out to dinner. And I told him, hey, we're going to go someplace nice. I said, where do you normally eat? He goes, I don't know, Taco Bell and the Chick-fil-A. And I'm like, all right, well, we're going to someplace, we're going to upscale a little bit here. So dress up a little bit. I don't know what I was expecting. I was not expecting a man showing up looking like he was going to a Miami wedding. That's all I was saying. He was dressed nice, and he's got on a suit jacket and tie, and I'm like, wow, now I feel underdressed where we're going. But he just showed up, he was confident, he was capable, he was kind, he was dressed the part. The man knew how to present himself in a way that you looked at him and said, he doesn't just like himself, he loves himself. And he respects the position that we're in because he's showing up appropriately. As a mentor, one of the things that I know that we do when we mentor young people is to help them be confident, capable, and kind, so when they arrive in a position, a place, that they don't feel like they're less than. And part of that takes practice. And I think you got a picture here, a video of how you help some boys practice to have that level of confidence, capable, and kindness you had, that love of self.
Yeah. First off, thank you so much. You know what I'm saying? I love to dress. Like, it's awesome. And the only reason I'm able to do that is because I grew confident and capable in the ability to be able to do so. But I also thought to myself, you know, one day the kids that I mentor, they're going to have a mentor. It could be me or somebody else. Take them out to a nice fancy restaurant that they've never been before. You know, have just meat on the plate and you don't even have to go touch it. Like, beautiful, right? They might be in a situation like that. They might have a dance that they might go to, or a wedding that they might go to. They need to dress up as well. They need to be able to be confident and capable and present themselves in the best way possible. So I decided to, one day, I just went into my closet. I grabbed every single tie that I owned, about 5 of them, and took them to the program. And I have about maybe 10 to 12 kids, like 5th and 6th grade right now. And I was like, all right, guys, we're going to learn how to tie a tie. And I got 2 reactions. One was, bro, are you my dad? Like, no. And then the other one was like, awesome, like, let's do it. I want to learn. So I gave the first 5, the only 5, to the kids who wanted to learn first. And we're like going, we're struggling with it. I'm like, all right, guys, over here, you know, put it. Actually, I think it's one of those things you have to be there. So I do have a video. It's a quick video, you know, shot by my iPhone, professional footage. But if you want to watch it real quick, yeah, you can click the next one, yeah.
Yes. And then I will put the tip in between those 2 fingers right there. And pull it through. Pull it through with this hand. Yeah, pull it through with this one. There you go. So now I'm recording. So in order to adjust it, hold this and pull it a little small and pull it up. There you go. Hit the shot. Yes, just don't choke yourself, bro. There you go. I'm just recording it. That's how you do it. There you go. That's perfect. It's a big time.
It's awesome. It's awesome. And I think what I love about that video is 2 things that I love. One was in the beginning, like towards the middle. I don't know if y'all saw, but there was like a kid with 4 applesauces in his hand, like trying to scarf it down. And then this kid right here, his name is King. When I told him about tying the tie, he was like, "Oh, my granddad taught me how to tie. I already know how to do it." Right? And then he sees everybody kind of like going, they're struggling. They finally got it. You can see the joy like on their faces, like, "Oh my goodness, I did it!" Like, "Oh my gosh." And he's like, "You know, Coach Styles, like, can you show me?" You know, he kind of pulled me to the side. "Can you show me how to do it?" It's like that. So we're going, we're struggling too. Once he finally got that tie, not only did he want a personal cameo for himself, he wore that tie the whole program. Talking about playing basketball, snack time, everything that we did, he wore the tie. Like, I had to take it off of him before he went to the car, because I only got 5. So I needed it back. But the only thing left for him to do, I showed him how to tie the tie, right? But the only thing left for him to do is to practice. And we learned again that practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes better. And in order for them to get better in tying ties, they need to continue to practice. Which, again, because we know that practice makes perfect, if you want to be a better leader, or in your campus, or throughout your career, or within the community, or even in your family, you have to first practice stewardship before leadership. Because that would be what will take you higher and higher and higher in your leadership, and also raise others. So when you are, like Jonathan, showing like, okay, this is how I became who I am, and it was through stewardship, now I can show you and guide you, and you can be a great steward as well, so that we can continue to grow. So that's also because we truly believe that
we have a shared belief about practice.
Yeah.
That their greatness tomorrow, this guy right here, right? Yeah.
Yeah, their
Their
greatness
greatness
tomorrow. It begins with your guidance today, from all of you guys. And those are like, maybe like half of the kids that I have. But yeah, it's awesome.
So go practice stewardship before leadership, because those whom you steward in mentorship, leadership, their greatness tomorrow begins with your guidance today.